morning, and thanks so much for joining us today here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the father-son team, and the financial advisors behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about them, about Ralph, Tim, the entire team over there on the website. That is welcomehomefp.com. You can also give a call. Start by getting that complimentary second opinion service or first opinion service if you have yet to really get serious about your retirement planning. That phone number, 804-635-3550, 3 locations in the Richmond area, but that number will get you where you need to go. Again, 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as always, by the father-son team, Ralph and Tim. Glad to be with you once again. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
How about you?
Doing well, thank you. You know, it's that time where Halloween candy, if you can still find it, is half off, which compared to the prices that they were a couple weeks ago is a great blessing. So taking advantage of that, and also digging through my son's trick-or-treat pile and maybe picking a piece here or there. But appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners. I want to talk about something called diversification. I think everyone is pretty familiar with that. When you spread money across a variety of different assets, it's a strategy that might work well during market volatility, well, until you actually look under the hood. Here's Dominic Papalardo with Morningstar.
Investors may build a portfolio. Think of your 401k account, for example. Maybe you own a broad market, the S&P 500 diversified fund. Maybe you also have a growth fund to try and get some upside. One of the index providers I looked at, the top 8 names in their broad market fund were exactly the same as the top 8 names in their growth style index. So investors may be attempting to get diversification by holding funds in different categories, and they're really not, because there's so much overlap from these large names. So even people that think they're trying to minimize that risk may not actually be doing that.
So there could be some redundancy in your portfolios, which is great if they're doing well. But, you know, is this something that you look for when someone brings their 401k in for a checkup? How do you actually utilize diversification as a strategy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we see it quite a bit. But, Chris, I would find it very hard to believe at this point in time if your son's got any Halloween candy left. But so when you take a look at the different funds, you have to kind of peel back the onion and see what that fund actually holds. And we see it a lot where a lot of the funds that people are using, they're doing the same thing. Their top holdings are the same across the board. And like you said, you know, it's fantastic when things are going well, but when things aren't going well, it's not very fantastic, right? So I think it's very important to kind of peel back the onion on that and take a look and see. But also, too, is you'll see a lot of funds, too, that have quite a bit of holdings. And I don't mean 30 different holdings. I don't mean 50 different holdings. I mean 300 different holdings. So, you know, you talk about diversification, and that is something that a lot of people talk about these days, but then there's something also that's called over-diversification, and I think I kind of equate that to diluting your performance. So you've got to make sure that, you know, okay, great, we've got these 6 funds that we're invested in. We want to make sure that all those 6 funds aren't doing the exact same thing. They don't have the same holdings. And, you know, target dated funds, people use those in their 401ks quite a bit, kind of the same thing, but you got to take a look at what you're trying to accomplish with your own dollars, because it's very important once you get closer to retirement, making sure that the strategy behind what you're doing as far as your investments and your retirement planning is on point. Because, you know, back to target dated fund, is the only really thing that they're looking for, the strategy behind that, is the actual year of when you want to retire. And that's not going to be everything, right? Because, you know, if you put yourself in a 20-30 fund today, but you're 30 years old, what are you accomplishing, right? But also, too, is if you are 60 years old and you want to retire at 62, do we need to be in the 2070 fund? Probably not. So once again, you know, it's important to understand what these funds are doing and not just looking at the overall performance, because that's how most people, you know, select what they're selecting is, okay, since inception, it's up 10% or whatever the case may be. You know, these funds probably are going to be doing the same thing and have the same holdings.
And I would say there's a lot of people that feel like diversification means that they've got 16 different CDs and 16 different banks. That's not diversification. That may mean to you that it is diversification, but that just means that you've got your money located in 16 different spots, not diversification for your end goal of trying to make it grow and be safe at the same time as you get closer to retirement. But there are a lot of people that, you know, think that if they do have money in different sources, such as different banks or credit unions, that's what they need to be doing. But guess what? How do you know that unless you actually sit down with somebody as a fiduciary, try to understand what your goals and aspirations are, and help you figure out a roadmap to get you where you want to go? And that's the biggest thing. You know, you can sit there and have those 16 different CDs or 16 different mutual funds. But how do you know, like Tim said, it's really diversification. You just have 16 different products that you're buying into, but you have no idea what it's trying to do for you. Because if you've got, like you say, the Magnificent Seven as the biggest holdings in each of the ones that you've got a risk factor there that you probably had not taken into consideration, or maybe your financial advisor hadn't taken that into consideration, and maybe you should start thinking about, maybe I should have a second opinion on something like this. Wouldn't you agree, Tim?
No, absolutely. And, I think most people, when they see, okay, hey, my 401k has got these, 5, 6, 7 different funds, we're going to be diversified. Well, it's potentially, but also too, when you take a look and see what those funds actually invest their money in, then what, right? So that's why most people don't take the time to do that. That's what we do. That's part of our job, is to see exactly what your funds are, what they hold, what they're doing, and see if that fits with your retirement strategy.
And everybody's different, Chris. Everybody's different, or at least they should be, because I don't think there's any one person or two people that's ever walked into our office with the same aspirations. Even husband and wives come in at the same time, got different opinions. Right, Chris? Don't you think?
Oh no, I would imagine so. And we joke there's a little bit of marriage counseling that goes on in the offices over at Welcome Home Financial Partners, but hopefully it is aligned enough where you guys can create that plan customized to them and what they want to achieve. Out of curiosity, when people come in for the first time for their second opinion, or perhaps even their first opinion, as we talk about so often, how many people actually know what they're holding, and more importantly, how many of them know why they've done it?
That's a good question, Chris. I think most people, when they come in, they don't necessarily know, what's in the funds that they're investing in or what have you, because once again, they'll take a look at, okay, the performance on this fund is 10% for the last 10 years or since inception or whatever. So that's what they're focusing in on, not actually what that fund holds, what comprises that fund. And that's, you can go in, you can investigate, you can get on that, what's that thing called? The Google. You can get on Google and so you can get on the Google and, see what the current holdings of those funds are. But, that's something that we do. But once again, a lot of people, this isn't fun for them. Like, they don't really necessarily care what's in that fund if that fund's performing. But I don't think that's the correct strategy.
I think most people, when they bring in their statement, the only thing they know anything about on that statement is, this is how much money I've got. They don't have any clue as to what they have for 90% of the people that come in. Yeah, you're always going to have a few people that are, dive into it, and engineering types.
Have their spreadsheets and their thumb drives and
all that. But it's rare that we do have that, but we do have it. But most people, they come in and say, hey, here's what I've got. And they throw the statements down and say, I have no idea what it is. I just know I got that amount of money. So you tell me what I got. So that's kind of the way things are.
Yeah, and to the point too, is not necessarily not even knowing what the fund is doing or what it comprises of, but they don't know. One of the worksheets that we work on, one of the questions is, what rate of return would you like to see? And most people, it's hard for them to answer, because once again, percentages aren't everything, right? It's more about the dollars and cents.
Right. But
on the same side is if they say, hey, I'm not really quite sure, which most people say that, I'm not quite sure, what's acceptable, what's suitable, what type of risk I'm willing to take, but they don't currently know what their performance is. And that's what, to me, especially as you're getting closer to retirement, you should be aware of what your accounts are doing, right? What the actual performance is. And most people don't.
I have to imagine there's a percentage of people who, when they come in and they bring those statements to you, they're probably still sealed. They haven't even opened them themselves. But, that's not necessarily the worst thing. At least they're coming in and seeking that second opinion and finding out, getting a better understanding of it. You may not necessarily know what you're invested in. It may be something that you elected when you first got your job, but as you get closer and closer to retirement, you want a bit more of a hands-on approach. It's not to say that you need to put your hands on it and you need to muddle yourself with the day-to-day. That is where a team like Welcome Home Financial Partners, that is where the fiduciaries, Ralph Short and Tim Short, come into play, being able to work and start developing that plan customized for you and your best interests. So if you're worried about market volatility, if you're not entirely sure what you're holding right now and you just want to make sure all your proverbial ducks are in a row, give a call. Schedule a time for that complimentary second opinion, 804-635-3550. or going online to the website at welcomehomefp.com. Of course, market performance is a large factor, but it's not the only thing that matters in retirement. I saw an article recently with the headline, "I'm 80 and my RMD is $300,000. What the heck am I supposed to do about my huge tax bill?" Guys, I feel like this is just another example of what can happen if you are very successful with your 401k and your IRAs. Isn't this why you talk about, doing things like an IRA to Roth conversion or taking taxes seriously in retirement?
Oh, for sure. And I'm not surprised that this has come across because, you can take a look at so many different people nowadays that their 401ks, their TSPs, their IRAs have been performing well and they don't necessarily need the money. So they just want to let it go. Whether they want to leave a legacy for their kids or their grandkids, or they just want to build up that money. But once again, you've got to be strategic about that because, I know a lot of people will think I'm crazy when I say this, but we don't necessarily want all of our taxable money to grow or tax deferred money to grow. But so much because at some point in time, do you really want to have a $300,000 RMD, right? That's going to be a huge tax bill. But, Roth conversions are one of those things that have been talked about quite a bit. And, some people say, hey, sign me up. And they don't necessarily know what that's going to encompass because you've got to make sure that you can account for those taxes today. But not just your Roth conversions, but why not just go ahead and take out some distributions throughout the years, pay your taxes. And if you don't need the money, just reinvest it. So it doesn't always have to be a Roth conversion. But, we talk about quite a bit is when you're working, you need to build up your accounts, right? Whether it's your TSP, your 403B, 401k, IRAs, whatever, that's where most people stick their money. But on the same side is once you get to retirement, it's more about distributing the money. And I think it's important to really take a look at, hey, if we've got, 10, 20, maybe $50,000 before we hit the next tax bracket, why not just go ahead and take out some withdrawals now, and you could do some gifting strategies with that if you don't need the money, or you could do a QCD for RMDs. I mean, there's a lot of things out there, but it's not, let's just set it and forget it. And now we have this big tax time bomb that's blowing up in our face because all of our money is doing very well, which congratulations. Yeah. But also, Uncle Sam's sitting there waiting too. So you got to make sure that you do it the right way.
And I would say, once again, the government has told us all these years that when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, so you shouldn't have to worry about how much money you make from your retirement accounts that you have to pull out. Well, guess what? There's this guy right here. I can say one thing. He did a great job at accumulating his assets during his working years, and he probably didn't spend anything to enjoy life along the way. So one of the things I would say is it's a great thing to have that kind of tax liability, but on the other hand, I am assuming, like me, he has a very difficult time writing a check to the IRS without shaking when he's writing that check out. Or in these days, you have to tell the CPA, just go ahead and go just direct deposit to their accounts. But what I would say to most people is you have to determine what you want to do with your accounts. Do you want to pay the taxes now, or do you want your kids to pay the taxes later down the road? That's kind of left up to you, but I would say that you need to enjoy some of your retirement accounts. Enjoy those things you've always dreamed about before it's too late, because sooner or later, you're not going to be able to enjoy it as much as you could when you're a little bit younger. And I'm not talking about at age 25 or 30, Chris, like you are, but I'm talking about when you're in your early 60s, early 70s, when you still have your health that you can do certain things with, because you don't know how long that's going to last. So, don't worry so much about the tax man, but you do have to be concerned that sooner or later, no matter how much money you've got to start taking it out, whether you want to or not. And that's when you need some help in trying to have a tax strategy to say, let's minimize it as much as you can, but you're always going to have to pay Uncle Sam. He's going to be that silent partner in your pocketbook at all times, no matter what your age is and what stage of retirement you are in. He's always going to be there.
Yeah, and these strategies too, they take a while, right? So it's not, hey, let's deploy this strategy today and tomorrow, we have these tax benefits. So you've got to make sure it's not, hey, okay, now I've hit RMD age. Now what am I supposed to do? No, we need to be thinking about this before, right? We've got to make sure we've got some time on our side as well.
The benefit to a Roth conversion, I think, is pretty well known, having tax-free income down the line. But It's not necessarily saying that you should do it for everybody, and you certainly should do it all at once because that does put you in a higher bracket. Out of curiosity, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, how many people, when you come in and you talk about, their risk tolerance and things like that, would they be comfortable? How many people say, I would be comfortable losing 20, 25, 30% of what I've got?
Yeah, most people don't say that, right? I don't think anybody comes into our office and puts their hands up and said, hey, I want to lose some money, right? We don't want to do that. The only time I've ever heard that is when somebody's going to the casino and they probably already have a couple drinks in them, right? So, when it comes to retirement, you want to make sure that you do it strategically. You want to make sure that you got some protection mixed into the portfolio. And, like we've talked about the funds in the 401ks, a lot of people, they still have the same investment strategies that they had 40 years ago, right? It could have done very well, but the future isn't always indicative of the past. You've got to make sure that what you're doing moving forward is right for you, and making sure that it's aligned with what you want for retirement and your time horizon too.
And negating those taxes could be counterintuitive because what are the tax rates these days?
Well, I don't think anybody wants to talk about tax rates at this point in time. But, speaking of them, our current president has made the current tax rates permanent. But, just like I tell anybody else, it's as permanent as it can be because the next regime could come in and just tear it all apart, which is usually what happens. So you've got to make sure what we know right now, and for the time that we've got, let's make sure that we capitalize.
They're permanent in pencil, so to speak. But, that's the thing is that market volatility, if you've got time on your side, it's questionable. The markets do come back. When you have to write that check to Uncle Sam, that money's gone. And so you want to take that into account. You want to take a look at things like the possibility of Roth conversions to minimize your tax obligations in the future because, Ralph, as you said, you've got a silent partner in your accounts named Uncle Sam until he's no longer silent because he's definitely going to want to make sure that he gets his share. Find ways to minimize that. Speak with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners and start developing that comprehensive strategy, which includes a proactive tax plan, 804-635-3550, or going onto the website, find out more about them, find out more information about the First Friday events they have going on at welcomehomefp.com. Now, if you retire with a 401k, the question usually becomes, well, what should I do with it? Generally, there's two choices. You either leave the money in the former company's plan or you roll it over to an IRA. What should people know about each of these moves? What do you generally recommend to clients?
Well, I can tell you across the board, we're going to tell them to take some action, right? There's not really a whole lot of sense of leaving something dormant, right? You don't want to leave it sitting, hiding away in the closet. And next thing you know, 30 years go by and there was a lot of time wasted of what you could have done, right? But you can leave it where it sits. You can move it to a current employer plan. You can roll it into an IRA. And there's always going to be pros and cons to making certain moves. But I think it's important that, a lot of people, what we'll see a big, in my opinion, a mistake that a lot of people do is, okay, hey, I've left this employer. I'm going to just take this and roll it into my current one. Well, if you roll it into your current employer plan, well, guess what? You've only got a list of investment options. So if you wanted to go out, and yes, I pick on Bitcoin quite a bit. If you wanted to go invest your money in Bitcoin in your employer plan, more than likely you can't do that, right? So you're going to have anywhere between 10, 15, 20 different funds. The majority of those are going to be target dated funds. That's what we've been seeing, the trend of, employer sponsored plans at this point in time. And why do you want to handcuff your money, right? If you rolled into your own IRA and you wanted to invest all your money in Bitcoin, you could do that, right? So I think it's important to sit down with, a local financial fiduciary and figure out what the next best steps are. But you've got some options, and whether you leave it, whether you roll it into your new employer plan or you roll it into your own IRA, and then you've got limitless options. You've got to get that advice, but you got to take some action and don't just let it sit.
And I'd say there's a lot of people out there just leave it alone and let it sit because, it's okay right there. But guess what? You might lose track of what you have because during your course of your working years, you probably had 4 or 5 different jobs and you probably had 4 or 5 different 401ks or 403bs, whatever your retirement plan was at work. But guess what? You might have lost track of it over the last 25 or 30 years. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, or you bring in all those statements to us so we can figure out what you got. That's normally what normally happens. And you'd be surprised at the number of people that worked for somebody 25, 30 years ago. And now they had a little bit of money in those accounts, but now all of a sudden, when we go back to look for it, it's no longer there, and we find out why, because it's been sold out 25 different places between now and then, because different companies merge with different things, and you have to figure out which one it is. But guess what? Those fees that they are charging probably has eaten into your principal. And I know for a fact certain clients that came into us that their $10,000 or $20,000 over the course of the years have dwindled down to $1,000 or even to zero because it was just eaten up. So those are some things that you need to be aware of. But the other thing is, let's simplify your life as you get in retirement. What do you want to track down 25 or different 30 statements and try and figure out what to do with them? Let's try and simplify your life so you can enjoy your retirement. Because I think most people, when they retire, they want to enjoy their life. They don't want to sit there and try and figure out what they've got, during the next 10 years after they retire. So that's another fact that a lot of people need to be aware of, is you can't be overwhelmed with all these different things. You need some help trying to figure out what to do that's best for you. And that's what a fiduciary will do for you.
I have to imagine there are some people out there who that is what they enjoy. The people who come in with the spreadsheets and the databases and stuff. Maybe that's what they want to do in retirement. And for them, I say more power to you. But for the majority of the listeners out there who want to spend their retirement actually enjoying their retirement, not being concerned with the day-to-day or trying to track down where this 401k is or how this 403b is performing, sit down and speak with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, the fiduciaries, Ralph and Tim Short, acting in the client's best interest. They're going to, show you the actions that you need to take, if anything. Maybe it does make sense to leave it where it is, but more often than not, consolidating, simplifying your plan as a whole is typically the move, but finding out the right way to do it and making sense of it all. Again, it's as simple as reaching out and scheduling a time to speak with them. You can go to welcomehomefp.com. That is the website. You can also give a call, 804-635-3550. Again, 804-635-3550. Tim, I was trying to stall for time because I didn't want to get to this question for your sake, but here we are. We're halfway through the NFL season, and already several head coaches, they're on the hot seat and in danger of losing their jobs. Usually that comes down to a couple of reasons. A poor start to the season after high expectations, a consistent losing record. It's been too long since a playoff appearance. Everybody think of their team and think of, well, we'll get into it. When it comes to planning your retirement, your financial advisor, in a way, is your coach. What are the signs that maybe it's time to put them on the hot seat?
Well, before I answer that question, can I turn around and you grab that knife out of my back that you just twisted?
I tried to stall for time, but I apologize.
How much time do we have? How much time we have in our window today? So, it is, yes, of course, if people have listened to the show or watched our television show or know me personally, of course, I'm a huge diehard Washington Commander fan. And I will tell you at this point in time, our Commanders are just not commanding. So put that on a T-shirt if anybody's listening. But, I think when it comes down to it, and we talk about this quite a bit, is, a financial advisor should be your team, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people, when they're working, they can do fairly well as far as building their wealth is concerned, right? Whether it's a 401k, their own IRA, what have you. But once you get to a certain point, you're going to need somebody calling the plays for you. And, I guess I can drop names here, but I could be your Cliff Kingsbury, right? So offensive coordinator for Washington. And, I think it's really important because not only are you paying for, the advice, you're paying for the strategies, but you're also paying for that support. And I think when, just take a look at this year. I mean, we had a rough start to the year, right? I'm not talking about football, but same thing. So, the stock market had a rough go at it this year. And there's a lot of people, man, when we were going down, people started selling out, and, like our clients, if they had money in the market, some of it wasn't going so well. And these are conversations to have. But that's why, once again, like we talked about earlier, is you don't want to position everything doing the same thing, because if everything is going down, it's a lot harder to deal with than if a portion of your money is losing, right? But I think there's a lot of people out there that, they're not necessarily doing the financial advising or having the team approach, and they're saying, hey, give me your assets and we're going to go out and invest this, and then I'll talk to you next year. If they're not talking to you, they don't communicate with you, they don't get back to you, they don't provide any advice other than the initial onset, what are you really paying for? And I think that's where a lot of folks are kind of anxious, for a lack of a better term, to hire a financial advisor because they feel like, oh, hey, I'm just a number. I've got $1 million sitting in my TSP. That's all they see. They don't see me. They don't see, what I want. They don't know my family. They don't know these things. They don't get to know me other than, hey, look at these statements. Oh, these look great. Hey, Mr. So-and-so, let's go ahead and take care of this for you. It is very important to have that team behind you because you need the advice. You need some support, like on Monday Night Football, maybe we needed a little bit more than what we got. And yes, Chris, I'm trying not to go into the game, but it's very difficult at this point. So, it is very important. And also too, to have other teammates too. So it's not just the coaches, it's not just the coaching staff. It's important to, have the entire support, and that's what the team can provide you.
And I would say, number one thing, that if you're afraid to call your advisor, that's really a sign that you need to probably think about looking elsewhere, because why should you be afraid of somebody you're paying money to do a job for? If you don't like him, get rid of him. That's the way you do things. But
time to throw that challenge flag.
That's right. But the other thing is, if they don't listen to you and they don't understand your different situation than when you first started with them, because guess what? As we mature in age, get closer to retirement or in retirement, probably some things have changed from your attitudes from when you were in your 20s and now you're in your 70s. Wouldn't you agree with that, Chris? Because guess what? Things will change in your life, will make you a believer in one thing or another, and then all of a sudden that will change. But if your advisor is only calling you, say, I've got a hot tip, we need to do this, we need to do that, that's probably something that he probably needs some help with his mortgage payment. So he needs a little bit of trading commissions for it. So you just need to understand that he is working for you. If you don't like what he's doing, if you don't understand what he's doing, because that's the number one thing, you may not understand everything, but you need to understand that he should have your best interest at heart. And by doing that means that he understands what you're trying to do. So our job is to help you get where you want to go. Your job is to tell us where you want to go. And until we know that, it's very difficult for us to do that. And most brokers, they care about one thing, and that is how much money you got and how can we trade it. And without understanding your goals, your aspirations, because that's what retirement's about. Let's have the best life that you can have, whether it's in retirement or before retirement. You need to make sure you have somebody on your team to get you there.
Yeah, and it's important that they get to know you. I know I already talked about that, but, do you think Dan Quinn just randomly says, okay, hey, we're going to go out and do this today? That's what training camp's for, right? That's kind of our retirement roadmap process, would be training camp, of getting to know you, see how we can get to where you need to be and draw those plays up. So, it is a lot more into it. You get to know somebody more on a one-on-one level than, just those statements.
Especially as you transition into, retirement, we talk often about, the difference between the working world and retiring, in the same way the difference between college football and the NFL. If you don't know the rules and the differences, it could be a big problem. The coaches that transition from college to the NFL or vice versa, Bill Belichick, a great example of how, it may not necessarily work out because it's a different mindset, it's a different strategy. So perhaps the financial professionals that you've been working with during the working years are great and they've done really well for you. Have they started talking to you about taxes? Have they started talking to you about, how to turn those retirement accounts into a retirement plan and sustainable income? Have they talked about healthcare, all these different things? If not, turn to the team, and if any of these things, if you're afraid to call them or if they're only calling you in the good times, I think it's time to get that second opinion, and it is a complimentary second opinion with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about the entire team on the website, welcomehomefp.com. Set up a time to speak with them as well. You can also give a call, 804-635-3550. Again, that is a complimentary conversation, 804-635-3550. Tim, I will say no one, I think, is going to call you Fairweather by any means, but we'll go and put that out there. So I apologize. I will take that knife out. I'll keep it away. I want to thank
you.
everybody out there, though, for joining us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Gentlemen, hope the same for you. But as we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
Well, we appreciate your time, Chris. Next time we'll keep the knives at home. And I will say that our Washington Commanders are now 3-5, and we're going to turn this ship around today versus Seattle. So we got to put a positive spin on these things. But yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot today. And obviously, I enjoy talking about my Washington Commanders in the good times and the bad times. But, we talked about 401k options. And, if you're changing employers right now, there's a lot of people changing employers, and it's not because they want to.
Right. It's
because they have to. So, if you've got an old 401k or an employer's plan sitting around somewhere, give us a call. We love the opportunity to talk about, what it's doing, what your fund's doing, how it's aligned, and seeing if that works for you. See what other options potentially could be out there. So once again, we want to thank everybody for listening. Take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.